Cool.
Welcome, everyone. This is Mapping the 50, and I'm so happy to be joined by Cody and Bjarne. Cody and Bjarne, how are you guys doing?
Doing great. Thanks, Matt.
Thumbs up. Thumbs up. Awesome. So giving a quick introduction to the people here, I have prepared a statement. So, Cody, let me introduce someone who needs no introduction, Cody Townsend. Cody Townsend is a professional skier and storyteller known for pushing the limits of what's possible in the mountains. You might recognize him from his iconic big mountain skiing from the 50 Project, where he's tackling the ambitious goal of skiing all 50 classic ski descents in North America. Cody's passion for exploring the backcountry, commitment to safety and education, and the ability to get us all excited to go skiing has made him a mentor to many of us. Cody, thanks for joining today.
Stoked to be here, Matt.
All right, and we're also joined by Bjarne. Bjarne is an award-winning filmmaker, adventurer, and one of the most respected visual storytellers in the outdoor industry. Bjarne has spent his career capturing the raw beauty of the mountains and the stories of those who explore them. As the filmmaker behind Cody Townsend's The 50 Project, Bjarne's work not only documents daring backcountry adventures, but brings to life the passion, preparation, and challenges of skiing some of North America's most iconic descents. Accomplishing these lines is challenging enough without having to lug around 50 pounds of camera gear while keeping up with the crew and documenting the whole thing. Bjarne, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here and join you guys.
Last but not least, I'm Matt Madick. I'm the senior marketing manager for onX Backcountry. And honestly, I'm just excited to be here and a part of this conversation. So thanks everyone for tuning in tonight. I am really excited to kick this off. And here we go. So for all attendees of this class, we have a special offer. We're offering 70% off of your first year of onX Backcountry. You can either scan this QR code to access that, or our CX friends will be putting that into the chat, so you can click it directly. And then during this webinar, we're also giving away a Hyperlight Crux 40 backpack, as well as an onX Backcountry Elite subscription and some swag from onX to one grand prize winner. So we'll also be putting that link into the chat for this one. And yeah, we'll probably put it in there a couple times during this webinar just to make sure you can all have a chance to enter. But Cody, you got that backpack? Where is it? Show them what they'll win.
You won't be winning my now 3-year-old prototype version. You will be winning, and it's all covered in sweat in the back. It's gross. You'll get a brand new one. So much better.
All right. So what's on the docket? We just took care of the introductions. The next, we're going to be jumping into Mapping the 50 Split Couloir, where Cody and Bjarne will be walking through the Split Couloir, which is a really awesome episode of the 50 Project. Then we're going to open up for Q&A, and then I'm going to get out my spinning wheel, and we are going to select a winner of that backpack at the end. So without further ado, Cody, do you want to kick off the presentation here?
Yeah, sure. So just so everyone knows, like, we're obviously going to be doing some insight into mapping and route selection, timing, kind of all the stuff that Bjarne and I've learned, not only in the last 6 years of the 50, but just 20, 30 years in the backcountry and these new digital tools. But we're also just going to be talking shop, talking story, sharing our stories from this line. Bjarne, I think you even might have mentioned this was potentially your favorite line of the entire project, right?
Yeah, I feel like that. Many factors went into that. We tried it so many times and we put so much work into it. And then the reward you and I got together was, yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, definitely probably top 3 of the 50 for me, for sure. Maybe top 2. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. We just, like, one, as the movie illustrated, there's a lot of meaning. Having a friend and mentor that was unfortunately killed in an avalanche there from years before, to the process of getting better in the mountains, gaining experience, becoming really, really familiar with this terrain and the snowpack of the Eastern Sierra in California. And then two, to just honestly, it was just Bjarne and I. And so often we've had so many guests. Generally, it was always just Bjarne and I when no one wanted to join us because it was terrible, like a bad traverse and horrible snow or something. But in this instance, it was just like, it was a marquee line. huge goal. We got to share it together, had the most incredible sunrise I think I've ever seen in my life. And it was just like it was a really cool thing for, I think, just this entire story of this project of Bjarne and I, and how much time we've spent together driving around in the mountains, sleeping in parking lots, making this little webisode series that started from nothing and just a little idea to something that, it's now been seen 20 plus million times. So, we'll get into it. Like Matt said, throw any questions in there. We'll try and do the Q&A box, and we'll try and get to them at the end. I'm going to do the scary thing of sharing my screen. Let's get into that. Okay, we'll go to onX Backcountry, and here we go. And I'm going to do the typical thing. Everyone can see my screen.
But Cody, we should probably mention that you and I are still friends.
Yeah, totally. That's the elephant in the
Yeah.
room. If people watch the 50 plus episodes, they haven't seen Bjarne in the first couple episodes. It was strictly just a timing thing. Mainly, it was right after we filmed the 2 episodes in Alaska, we spent 35, 38, 40 days in a tent together. And we're still friends, which is impressive. But no, it was just more of a thing. I don't know, you have a life beyond the 50. I have a life beyond the 50. Sometimes they don't always line up. And we do plan on working together, not only for 50 plus episodes, but for some of the last lines left of the 50 that we're still kind of quietly working on in the background. So yeah, get that question answered ahead of time.
Good.
Yeah. So Split Couloir, labeled one of the 50 classics. I'm assuming most people have seen the episode. It's 55 minutes long, more of a film, kind of knows all the story to it. But it's in the Eastern Sierra of California. And the first thing kind of get into it is I did a big kind of draw up of where this line is. So one of the things actually I'll talk about first, which I find incredibly cool, these purple lines all here, this is onX's integration of a friend of mine's guidebook. It's actually right here, lives behind me. I've read this back and forth, but Nate Greenberg's Backcountry Skiing, California's Eastern Sierra. This is our Bible for the East Side. When I first got this over a decade ago, it was just staring, flipping through it, trying to decide on lines. It was even in the episode that we did. You could see me reading the guidebook before going up there. So all these purple lines, there's that integration. onX integrating a respected, trusted author who knows these mountains, lives in these mountains, and putting it straight into the app. So it's where we're seeing the analog world meet the digital world. And not only for ski lines, which I know most of these by now because I've studied that book, it makes it incredibly easy to visualize where these lines are. But I found this summer too, I did a lot of hiking and scrambling and running in the Eastern Sierra as well. The integration of Mountain Project in there, it was so awesome. I'd just scroll through mountains, click on it, be like, okay, I'm looking for a Mountain Project line that's a class 4 or class 3 scramble, and just scroll through and map it all out. And the integration of what I think is trusted guidebook authors is just a different level. Something we've had as discussions, because I've been with onX for quite a long time, of, there's the heat map approach, which I was very adamant of going against, and going for using respected, trusted authors to create this information for people. So it's really cool, come in here, scroll around, click on these lines. As we'll note too, that comes with a disclaimer. There's digital tracks here. They are not the exact digital trail that you should be following. They are generally quite close, as you can see from this split one, but there's various discrepancies here and there. So you always have to use them as a loose guide and have your head up, aware, make decisions based on terrain, make decisions based on conditions and whatnot. I always think a guidebook is just a great way to just kind of get you there, and then you go into the mountains and you use the most important tool, which is your brain. So, but this integration is super awesome. Click on this line, go to Mount Tanahama East Face, see all the stats, look at the eights levels, the complexity of terrain, the write-up that Nate has done. Super, super awesome. So that's my little pitch of why I think it's pretty cool. But anyways, the next thing we're going to get into, everyone's probably familiar with layers, but this is one of the biggest advantages of is it the elite tier membership, Matt?
Yeah, so on the elite tier, you can see private land. That's a layer that's reserved for the elite. But if you're a premium user as well, you can still see what type of land it is. Just with the private lands layer, you can actually see who owns that land and where the borders are.
Yeah.
So the government land layer will work for this use for premium users as well if you don't have that elite.
So onX has been a big proponent and activist about landlocked public lands. And if you're not familiar with that, there's huge issues in Nevada, Montana, Wyoming, federal Supreme Court level lawsuits where entire swaths, mountain ranges, this public land is closed off by private owners. So with no trespassing laws, you're not allowed to cross their land and access your own public land. So this is becoming more of an issue on the Eastern Sierra as well. And it became an issue when after the first year we went there. So the route that we normally go in on and is described in the guidebooks and friends share, drive up this road, go up Tinnemaha Road, up here, it then turns into dirt road, and then you cross through these roads, come up here all the way to this Red Lake trailhead, which is right there. But we came back, I don't remember what year it was, but I remember Bjarne and I were driving in the dark, and all of a sudden there's a gate and a no trespassing sign. And you see that these private landowners have closed off all access, and this was the only access. So quickly you're like, okay, like, how do I get around this? So with onX and then even onX Off-Road, which I found quite useful, not as big, but start searching for a lot of these dirt roads, found this dirt road that seemed to go the highest, and then how we get up there, and then to see, are you going to be crossing any public land? So it was, I believe in, I forget what year it was, but we were driving up there and found this route up the Aberdeen and kind of first parked on this slopey hillside, and we're camping out in our vans on a sloped angle. This is kind of the new public access that you have to take. This is Red Lake Trailhead over this little roll here, and we would have to walk like an extra mile and an extra 1,000 feet. So those kind of government land and private land layers, I find, are super key when you're trying to access remote lines like this. Trying to figure out navigating to the base of the line can be as complex as trying to figure out the line itself. So our first couple times we went down there in 2023 when we skied it, we ended up starting here. Eventually, I studied this map enough that I found a road that did not cross this land, went all the way through here at the base of the Sierras, and then spit out on Glacier Lodge Road. So there's you can see, if you noticed in the episode, oh, that's the wrong one, wrong waypoint. The episode at a Ford Bronco, because my wife owns a Ford Bronco, or she's an ambassador Ford Bronco, and it was pretty gnarly off-roading to get there. So we borrowed her car and slept out in the dirt instead of the luxuries of a van. We all just kind of drove down in one car, piled in here, and then did some gnarly four-wheel driving to get to Red Lake Trailhead. Yeah, Bjarne got introduced to the Sierra Dirt Nap, as we call it. Like, we love our vans, but man, there's something so great about sleeping out on the dirt in the desert.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we of course we get kind of cozy in our vans all the time, but it's something to say about taking a sleeping bag and just sleeping on the ground. So it adds to the adventure. And thanks to Elise that we could borrow her Ford Bronco. That was some rock and roll driving. That was pretty fun, actually.
It was super gnarly driving. It got washed out in some floods. The road got washed out in floods that year. So, and the onX Off-Road, what I've noted is a lot of these trails have ratings systems, just like we have rating systems for the mountains. And so you can go in and kind of see what kind of vehicle is going to be able to get up these types of roads. So a lot of these roads are color coded from community input in ways that allow you to know if you need a Ford Bronco, or you can get up there in a Subaru or a van or your little Kia, you know. So onX Off-Road I found to be quite useful for that sort of stuff as well. Okay, so Split itself, show you some photos of it. Pretty iconic line. You can barely see it from the highway. 14,000 foot peak, one of the 14ers in California. And yeah, just towers above everything. And then from the highway, you can see just this like upper section from here, and you just see this gash in the middle of the mountain, and it looks like, whoa, what is that? And then unfortunately, once you climb up into the basin or fly over it like this, you see, oh, it's a bit more complex than I first imagined. It's not just a perfect couloir. There's a lot of complexity down low. So
And it's also like a classic couloir where you like a nice deep couloir you actually don't see until you're under it, because you walk and walk in the basin and you're like, oh, where is it? Where is it? And then suddenly you just like, and this is definitely one of them.
for sure. No, I will actually go into that. The one zone we would walk up to above camp. So, okay, Red Lake Trailhead. The first thing kind of talk about is this zone. So you can tell this is a very narrow river valley. And we had made the decision pretty early on to want to do this line in 2 days. From the car to the summit is around 8,500 vertical feet. It's also, I forget, 14 miles, 19 miles round trip. It's a big day. Definitely doable in a day, and most people would do it in a day. But considering some of the accidents that have happened in this line, some of the close calls that I'd heard of through friends, I always like to build in more margin for error. Bjarne and I share a very similar risk tolerance, where if we can build margin, meaning giving us more safety, more leeway, and in case of an error, we're always going to do that. So instead of doing it in 1 day and showing up and it's like already noon or 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock, if anything goes sideways, you all of a sudden pushing out later and later to the warmest hours of the day, and you're skiing a line with wall that is very south exposed, and anything from that south exposure can come down on you straight into that couloir. So for us, we had made the decision pretty early on that it was like, we're going to do this in 2 days. It's going to be harder, it's going to be heavier, but it's going to be safer. And that's a lot of the decisions that Bjarne had discussed when we're in the mountains. Like, there's always an easier way, there's always a faster way, but we kind of look at things as like, one, what's the safest way? Two, what's the like way that we want to do it that personally inspires us? And then three, it's like that style factor. One of the things here, I can go into the map and show you that this gully, being a tight gully, it actually presents a lot of avalanche hazard. If we turn on, I'm going to turn off these ones. If we turn on slope aspect, you can quickly see that this tight gully is overhanging south exposure, and not just like small overhead exposure, like huge. We're talking 7,000 vert all the way up to like, let's see, almost 12,000 feet. All these paths do run. And so that was the other reason why we were starting so early, even the day before, and showing up at our camp at noon and sitting through the rest of the day in the heat of the sun. But we wanted to pass through this. I think, Bjarne, you had like possibly, I think, the funniest line in the entire 50 project about this zone. Do you remember it?
Do you want me to share it?
Yeah, I definitely do.
Well, there were two lines. One was what we just talked about, and the main reason why we don't go in when it's hot is because we don't want to be in there when those big avalanches are coming down that we are basically walking on right there. So that's the main reason why we go. And then, well, if you wanted to, I'll give you a good laugh. What did I say? Yeah, sometimes I like to refer the mountain to her, and I basically say, without thinking about it, that you gotta wait to she'll let you enter. And the editor decided to put that in the video, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah, which
Yeah,
is
and it's true. Like, and it's true.
yeah,
Like, you gotta wait to the mountain until she's ready for you, and until you can enter. So that's basically it. Yeah.
which I remember you saying, you're like, that sounded weird after like the moment after you said it. It was a gold line. So,
Yeah.
but yes, we do pay attention to when the mountains allow you to come into them.
Yeah.
I kind of always look at it in a way of you ski what the mountains let you ski, and gaining information about the mountains is really important. Not only just from research, the amount of research that you and I do before going into these lines. I had been researching these lines for years to then this line in particular. I will personally walked up to the base of that couloir probably 7 times. I know we as a group did it like at least 4, possibly 5 times. And that's, you get familiar with the moods of a mountain, you get familiar with the terrain of a mountain, you get to know when are the times that it's okay to walk in, when are the times that it's not okay. All that kind of stuff is, I think, one of the most enjoyable parts of being in the mountains, of kind of trying to be observant, being a part of the place as opposed to just redlining to your goal and going for it, just understanding and learning about a landscape.
Yeah, and it's
So yeah,
important to listen, right? You're listening to the mountains, and if the mountain doesn't want you there, like, you better listen and go home and have a coffee. Like, that's kind of the bottom line. And if you see those signs, you better listen to them.
totally. And you can see it's pretty obvious from just looking at the topo that it's quite steep above, but like this is prime avalanche terrain when you see the slope angle. So you put slope angle and slope aspect together, you know that you're like, we are got a lot of overhead hazard that's all south facing. So we do not want to be walking slowly for an hour or two under this during the warmest part of the day, which is again why we started at night every single time. It's not quite out yet for this terrain. It keeps rolling out, but this is when the 8 avalanche terrain exposure scale avalanche run out this layer, which again is not here. It's in Tahoe, it's in Colorado. It keeps rolling out. These are the kinds of things that are not just pure like algorithmically based. They're using professionals dictating a lot of this information and fact checking the information, which is, I'm really proud of a company like onX doing that, like fact checking, not just rolling stuff out and just being like, yeah, it's good, we're all good. Like knowing that like the run out is going to be showing this entire valley. So check to see in your local area. They keep rolling out year to year, month to month. Like I said, it's already in Tahoe. It's fun playing around with it. Okay, we're going to keep walking up. Once we're in here in this zone, again, with the slope aspect, we're in south-facing terrain, but it was like a lot less overhead hazard. There wasn't as defined as slide pass. So as we got into this zone, we were less worried. But this was also, there's 2 hills here, and I kind of started, felt like the heartbreak hills. They were super steep. As you can see, they're very frozen, and I was having to wear ski crampons. We all were. We weren't going to make it up this mountain without ski crampons. And that again goes into kind of that slope angles, or not slope aspect stuff, of knowing that like, oh, this is facing in a way, this is pretty dang east. It gets a lot of sun and it's going to melt during the day, and a freezing night, it's going to get rock hard. And then that slope angle, again, you can see this terrain is like quite steep. Like you can see, we're looking at like 40, 45 degree skin tracks, and you can see our track cutting through it. It was pretty demoralizing to be walking up there with a 45-pound pack, like in back-to-back days sometimes, or with
Especially
one day
like
off.
attempt number 5, then you're like, oh well, here we are again.
Yeah, totally. You're like, no, one of these hills. So yeah, and this is the top of the second one, which is, well, I think personally, as a guy that grew up in California and grew up on the east side, one of the coolest things about the east side is these right here. And I was like so stoked to show Bjarne. I'm like, you got to see the trees. And I think we had a little segment or put some social media about it, just like how amazing this place is. The trees in the east side, thousands of years old. The juniper Sierra trees are some of the oldest organisms on planet Earth, and they live at these high elevations, and you can like see them sculpted by the winds of time and just through harsh winters, and it's just like they're so cool and so beautiful. And the coolest part too,
I think I could be up there and just take photos and film those trees for like days. That's how cool they are.
They were so beautiful. I just, every time we got to that point, it was the top of that second hill, and it was this, not only this feeling of like, oh, we're done with the steep sections, but you're also just in this zone where you're like, oh, these trees are so beautiful. What I found really cool too is like the east side in the Sierra, like I'm going to zoom out right here, but like we were in the zone. I went up there solo one time, and it's, you know, I don't see a soul out there. We saw one person, I think, in the entire time of our attempts out there. And like you are, as the crow flies, like 2 to 3 hours from Los Angeles, like one of the biggest metropolises in the world. My heart goes out to them right now, by the way. Terrible tragedy, what's going on. But like to be on the Eastern Sierra, you're like 3 hours as the crow flies from 20 million people, and there's absolutely nobody. It's so cool. And I also, when it comes to sharing it, I'd like to share that stuff, and I like to share this because I want other people to have those experiences. And it's really cool to be able to go into these zones and be out there and see these trees and witness these things. And generally, if you see other people, you know, they have the same mindset as you, and you're stoked to see people. I'm not that kind of person that tries to hold terrain back for myself. I want to share these places because they mean so much to me, and I feel like other people should be able to have that opportunity as well. Okay, campsites. We're going to go into our 2 campsites, one of which was an air. This first campsite was, I believe, when we tried it in February, I forget what happened with Nick, but Nick was late. We were waiting for him, and we didn't get started till noon, I want to say, correct? So, and to get up there, and it was super cold, so we weren't worrying about warming. Like when we got to this little campsite, the sun was down, it was below zero, and we just were like, we're throwing our tents up, and we were short of where we wanted to be, which was closer to the line. But what it ended up being was a very good campsite because if you kind of look at the general terrain features, these scoops, these are essentially, in certain ways, these valleys can be wind tunnels, and sheltering in trees in a low spot, a little bit out of the way. You see this kind of pitch that comes down here, this like finger was sort of guards you away from the wind. If the winds are going to be prevailing from the southwest, they're going to come down, get blocked and turned around here. So although there was wind, we were completely sheltered. It was a really cold night. And Bjarne, actually, you and I both had a horrible night. You had a worse night.
Oh, it was not good. Well, I'll tell you guys, don't put these food that you can buy that are dehydrated meal. You pour boiling hot water in them, then you kind of stir them. And I was so cold, so I put it inside my jacket. I literally had pad thai into my underwear. It was horrible because it's exploded. It was so bad. It was so bad. And then what happened to you, Cody?
Oh, I slept on the snow that night because my pad deflated. I had a 1.5 year long run. I went through like 4 different air pads and 4 different companies, and every time I'd go on a trip, my pad would have a leak in it, and so I was just
I don't know what you do. Like it's like every time it's just like
Baffin Island.
Yeah,
10 days on the ice. I had a deflated pad that night, the coldest night in the Sierra I've ever had. It was just over and over. I was like, I forget even St. Elias. There was one other trip. I was like, this is ridiculous. But from a campsite perspective, dude, those are the kinds of things I'm looking for. I'm gonna pull up the satellite imagery. It's a little hot right now. Oh, that's why I have the recent imagery on, which is another feature. If you guys don't know about, you saw me click through this preferred base map imagery. Click into there. I have it on snow imagery because I was literally just looking what the snow is like down in the east side. So these images come within, I believe, 2 week spans or so, or 2 weeks plus or minus, correct?
Yeah, and you're currently in the snow imagery. If you click the recent imagery, that shows you the recent.
Oh, recent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Sorry.
yeah, there you are. So this is an elite feature. And every 2 weeks we have a new image that shows you what the snow looks like.
Yeah. And getting satellite imagery is not cheap. onX doesn't own any satellites as far as I know. And so part of the premium membership being like, it gets you this. So I was like clicking through this and just being like, oh, yep, it's dry as a bone down there. As I thought, but we'll go to high quality imagery, keep away from the snow right now. So give you kind of a more of a lay of the land of why this was a good camp spot and why this was a very bad camp spot. So like I said before, you can kind of see these two slopes that are coming down, these like funnels around this mountain and this giant mountain kind of guarding you. If there's winds going to be coming from the southwest or the west or the northwest, they're going to be funneling straight here. And if you are looking back onto the topo hybrid, you'll see we were on a high point. And it's generally pretty ill-advised to camp on a high point. And the Sierra is a place where I generally feel like the weather is on the stabler side, but you're still in big mountains. And Bjarne and I went up there for one attempt and got our asses handed to us by a windstorm.
In the middle
like
of
I
the
saw,
night.
yeah, woke up at midnight trying to get up early, trying to be on the summit at sunrise. And like, it was like, what is going on? Like, I saw like 30-mile-an-hour winds in the forecast, but it was like funneling through and hitting us upwards 50, 60 miles an hour to the point where we had to make the call. We're like, we can't go up there. It's got to be worse up higher. And we hunkered down in our tent. We actually had to, tent was not the best tent. I'm not a fan of it. Open up all of the vents because the walls were catching so much wind that it was essentially folding the tent on top of us. So we opened the vents up so the wind would blow through. And we just kind of snuggled and shiver bivvied the entire night and just like really didn't sleep that much until we woke up and our tent was broken, poles were snapped, and we had to get out of there. And that was like a very demoralizing experience because the day before we had gone up into the first viewpoint of the couloir and saw for the first time in many years that the couloir was actually filled in. And we're like, we're doing it. We're doing this. And then the mountains had different plans for us. So we actually skied down, drove home, saw my kid, got some food, reset, drove down the next day after that and went for it again. And then that's when we ended up having success on it. I'm trying to think. Is there any other stories from that night?
From that spot is also where you can like see the couloir, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, this was actually, yeah, I'll show you. This was kind of the view of where our campsite was, which is just split is just it kind of this sunset on it made it feel like it is. It's a very powerful mountain. It feels like grand and almost spiritual in its own way. It is just like you come around the corner and it's absolutely spellbinding on how big the towers are. It doesn't feel like you're in North America. It feels like you're in the Alps. It feels like you're somewhere in a bigger range. It's just like such an impressive mountain. But where we would go for all the discussions was this point right here. As Bjarne said earlier, the walls are so steep on this couloir that the only place you could see the actual line is to walk like right up directly 180 degrees looking into it. And this was where we would come up and try and scout the line and see if we were going to keep proceeding. Let's see. Talk about When did it, I mean, I think I had talked about it a lot, but we had decided at some point. So traditionally in this line kind of talks about it. And this has the traditional line is going straight up the couloir. There's traditionally an ice climb, about a 10 to 20 meter ice climb.
Hold on, we are in
And
North America. People don't
oh
know
yeah,
me.
totally.
Sorry.
I see you and I start talking
Yeah.
to meters.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yeah.
30 to 50 foot ice climb. But we had started kind of talking about our approach to this line, and I personally wanted to kind of try to ice climb it, but we'd never seen the ice in. And then we kind of just got to this place. I remember I got to a place was like I felt the pressure of people before that had done this climbing the line, but also the stories of the close calls and the accidents that had happened came from climbing the actual line. So I kind of personally, Bjarne, and had those discussions of being like, yeah, you want to do it in this cool style, this challenging style, but ultimately, what do we want to do? We want to ski this line, but we want to make it as safe as possible. And so that's when we started discussing this route, which was the roundabout way and dropping in top down. Bjarne, you like there's this rule in skiing quite often you hear like climb what you ski. I I don't think it's a dead fast rule, but in Chamonix it's more of a rule, correct?
Well, it's a little bit different. You know, in Chamonix, yeah, we also joke about that very often. Do you mean it's Chamonix steep, or do you mean it's like North America steep? Because things in
It's
Chamonix
not
is
as steep as Chamonix.
yeah, exactly. The thing is, in Europe, very often you have this ice underneath the snow, so that can be pretty tricky sometimes. If you climbing around and then dropping in, then you can easily hit ice underneath the snow because you don't know how deep that snow is. So that's kind of where I'm coming from a little bit. That it's if it's ice underneath the snow, just make sure you climb it because where it's kind of thin snow, then you have to make sure that you're skiing exactly where you've been boot packing up, right? But the negative thing with that is that you're spending so much more time in the couloir itself or on the ski on the face. Sometimes there is no way around, and then you just like, well, most of the time there's no way around. So you just have to climb up and ski down. But here, you know, there's not some sections have some ice underneath, but it's not much. It's like a couloir, it's a lot of rock. And then we looked at this onX map and we were like, well, can we go around? And we were like, yeah, let's explore it.
Yeah, there's like you have to evaluate what is going to be the upsides and the downsides of going top down or bottom up. And there is benefits to both. And you have to make an evaluation based on the snow conditions and the line itself, even the mountain range you are in. For me, this couloir, the stories are of the rocks on the walls of the couloir itself being very loose and temperature sensitive, and rockfall frequently happening within it. Obviously, I discussed it in the line, but my friend Kip Gar and Allison, who died in an avalanche, were climbing it and were just exposed to an avalanche that broke above them while going up it. So I looked at time spent in the couloir as actually the number one hazard. And as Bjarne said, there is some ice in it. But what you have to do is ski that much more carefully and start to down climb, take your crampons out, your ice axes out, your ropes out a lot earlier than you may think to prevent the catastrophe that could happen, which is you're skiing down and you hit ice and then you have an uncontrolled fall. But to me, the number one hazard, we can control that factor. Bjarne and I can make a decision, be like, we're starting to see ice, we're getting towards the rappels. Okay, we're switching over, we're taking out the ropes, and that's something I can control. I can't control exactly when the rocks are going to fall. So to me, the hazard seemed like going around was going to minimize our main hazard, and so we kind of started to decide that this was the best way possible.
Yeah, and another thing as well, when you like coming in from top like that, you know, most of the time there is no way around, so you just have to go underneath. But when you can go around, and like we say, and it's not that much ice, I think that's a good idea for many reasons. Mainly, like you said, Cody, not as much time in the cooler. Another thing is that we can actually check the snow up there. You know, we can drop in from the top, and if it's we can push snow down if we can, and that's just a good thing. And we can also check the snow up high if it's stable or not. And you can't do that if you're climbing from below. You have no idea what can happen. So that's another reason why going around.
Yeah, totally. And I think one of the coolest things about this project was going to so many different mountain ranges and seeing how each community of backcountry skiers approach their mountains. And there's such different techniques and approaches and gear that they bring. Like in the Tetons, everyone has a rope with them. In the east side, they don't. And I know I've had some discussions with Nate Greenberg, who was in an avalanche incident a few years ago. And we talked about like, hey, learn from what the Tetons do. And if you had a rope, you would have been able to ski cut that in a much safer way. And so being able to take from different kind of backcountry cultures, if you will, has been really, really cool to kind of see this. Like in Revelstoke, in the Selkirks, learning from Greg Hill that you do pretty much everything top down there. Ice is less of a worry. Deep snow avalanches are much more of a worry. So you try to be able to enter from the top, ski cut, push snow down, test it in that sort of way. Because you can, in a controlled environment on a rope, do a ski cut and then thing slides and you're like, cool, we're hiking back out of here. Whereas if you were doing it bottom up, you're going to be in that avalanche. So we made that call pretty early on. This section right here, if you saw in the episode, it wasn't just a sponsor plug to put me. I took out my phone because it was the night of our successful attempt. It's pitch black. There's no moon. This basin, which you can kind of see here, we're in here, and you're like, okay, where are we going? Like you don't know that I kind of got to bend left a little bit. The terrain didn't give you clues, and it was like kind of that moment of being in the pitch black, no idea where you're going, bust out the map, stare, get the GPS location. Oh, there we go. The map is pre-downloaded on my phone. Just like one of these things, you're like, wow, these little tools make things that much better, safer. Because again, we wanted to be up there at sunrise for many different reasons. One was just pure, we thought it'd be a cool view, but two was safety. But just, I remember having that in the episode because I wanted to show, like, I remember that moment we were like, wait, do we go left here? Do kind of keep going straight? How left do we go? And then just pull out the map. You're good.
Yeah, it made it much easier. I'm glad you kind of pulled that up there. It helped us with time for sure.
For sure. And then even on these upper sections, so there was this head wall that we kind of get into. This upper section, which was a steep kind of snow climbing section, crampons, no more skins. But this section too, like it's a giant open snow and scree field. When you're in the dark, navigating where to go, not walking off a ridge line is incredibly important. As you can see here, it's like it just looks like one bulbous view, and you can kind of see in this terrain, you're like, well, you don't know exactly where you're going. Having that is really key. This was an aerial photo I took. This is kind of that steep head wall, and then going up all the way to the summit here. Moving on up the summit of Split. I know for myself, I've told the story to a lot of people, but this was one of like the most special moments of this entire project. The most beautiful sunrise I've ever seen in my life. 14,000 feet, watching the sun start to come up to the west, and yet stars still sparkling off to the east, and or vice versa. Let me say that wrong. The sun rising in the east, stars kind of in the dark of night still out in the west, almost seeing like the curvature of the earth. It was like, yeah, that was so cool.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's like walking for that long and that many hours and then be up there with you was like super fun. And we literally we timed it just perfectly. It was just meant to be like this. I get kind of shivers on my skin here. It's like it was such a good moment. And if you plan to be up there in good time, we could actually enjoy the sunset. But if we got up there like hours late, it'd be like, okay, let's go. Now we could come up there on time and then just enjoy that sunrise for some little bit before we like dropped in, which was, as me as a filmmaker and photographer, it's just like that you need that, that's you want that, and it was totally worth it.
Oh, I see someone asked, not do a question totally, but what does the red line represent? I did skip that. So every time before I go into the mountains, and a line like this, I'm going to be drawing a line, trying to get a guesstimation of kind of what is the actual length of it. So this is just a guesstimation line that I did before we went up there for, and so you're looking at it and going, oh, 6 miles, 8,500 vert. You can see putting these isn't as precise as what this line was, which was a digitally tracked line, our actual the day of ascent and descent. So that was kind of one of the things as a tool I do quite often before going into the mountains. Get a rough estimate of the mileage and the vert so that you can plan out how long is this actually going to take.
I mean, that's key to plan that out. I think it's never going to be like 100% because you're not going to follow that line, but it's super key in terms of timing, how much water you should bring and food. I think that's key to do every time.
Definitely. So here's another thing. I think this is the one. No, it's this one I wanted to pull up. These are when maps come really useful, because the first time we went up there, it heard it's actually kind of hard to find the entrance to this. And when you do map research beforehand, you can kind of start to see that, oh, there's a line around, because as you saw from this photo, like you can see down into the couloir below, but what's here is just like absolute vertical cliffs. So being able to kind of visually scout beforehand that, oh, I think the entrance is around the back, which seems kind of, it's just like almost, it doesn't make sense when you're going up into the mountains. You think you just arrived to the top and ski that side. But the summit block was up in here and we had to kind of come around this way. So that research is kind of the thing that gives you confidence to move and go into where you need to be. It always is a bit of discovery. I remember hiking down there and you're like, is this the way in? You're kind of edging up to the edge of this cliff going like, I don't know where we're going. But when you do research, you can kind of see that, oh, no, this is how you get into it. These are that upper slope, the sneak through. And then kind of that upper pitch that gets into the main couloir. So you take a 45, 60 degree turn to the left to hit right here, right into the main couloir. Yeah, here's a photo of that little sneak through to get around it. You can kind of see. Okay, let's go into the line itself. One thing, if you've done these before with me, GPS tracking when you're in the extreme north or in steep walled couloirs can be very poor. So all these little things, that's just satellites pinging off the walls of the couloir and trying to locate where we are. So that's not the actual line we took. That's
don't follow that one. Don't follow that one.
I won't send you the GPX line to follow it. One of the cool things, again, you can kind of, through slope angle, you can kind of see this upper pitch. If you saw that first photo, it's not that steep. And then it rolls over right here and gets quite steep. We're all looking at 40, 45 plus in this zone. This is kind of the rollover pitch. You can kind of see Bjarne standing right. It's only like probably 20 feet away in distance, but like 40 feet down. That's when you know it's steep. Your hands dragging on the side of the snow. Ended up when we skied it was just the perfect conditions you can have for skiing steep couloirs.
Yeah, it was so good. You could like link a lot of turns and like we had fun on the way down, Of course you take it very easy since we didn't climb up the line, but we stayed on the wall there and we found some good snow and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, one of the tricks in these kind of couloirs too is like you've heard me grossly refer to couloirs as the butthole of the mountain. Everything flows through them. So when these kind of are V-shaped, This snow in the middle tends to be pretty poor, and that's where slough goes. So we're always kind of trying to ride the edges of a couloir like this. Let the slough kind of go down this double fall line. So it'll fall away from your skis down here, and you stay away from kind of the gut of the couloir, which is where slough will catch you, an avalanche could get you. And the snow just tends to be worse because of the slough that goes through. And then our rappelling section. So this is kind of what it looked like and when we started down climbing. You always want to start down climbing too early before it gets, and not too late. And this was definitely one of those calls where we went early and we're probably thankful for it, right?
Yeah, I think so too. And it's like, you know, to me, it's like if you can ski another, let's see, feet, meters, another, let's say another extra 5 turns, but then you might end up in this spot where you're like, oh shit, I should have stopped earlier. Now it's going to be, I'm okay, but I'm going to take my skis off and I'm going to put that on my pack. And that's just like kind of sketchy. So, I mean, you and I are very similar. We just kind of play as much as we can on the safer side, and I don't mind stopping a little bit earlier. So
yeah, so we stopped, we transitioned when there was still good snow, crossed over this. I did find some blue ice, and then this section, which has been very sun affected. Again, we'll go into that slope angle, but you can kind of see this is more south facing, was still bulletproof at that part of the morning, which was bad for skiing, but good for safety because all this stuff didn't start to slough on us. We didn't get ice chunks rolling down on us. All this stuff would loosen up by the afternoon. So this was probably like 8 in the morning. And although it made us down climb and not ski as far, we weren't walking this like narrow margin of it being perfect corn snow and then all of a sudden turning into wet slides or having ice falls or rock coming down on us. So yeah, we down climbed, which is, you all heard me say, I hate down climbing. Bjarne's like the best down climber I've ever seen. So you probably can like ski as fast as he can down climb. It's crazy.
I actually enjoy down climbing. It's pretty fun. So it's good we're like helping each other there sometimes.
Did you enjoy it on St. Elias this year?
That was a different story.
Different story. That'll come
Yeah,
out one day.
but I'm
That was
glad
not as fun.
I'm glad I practiced down climbing for many years because I had to execute every little skill I had for down climbing, to say the least.
Yeah, that was the ultimate down climb, I would say.
Yeah.
And then we roped up and built an anchor and wrapped in. This so notoriously split. I had heard from Beta and from other people like Christian Bondella, legendary photographer, incredible ski mountaineer, that this rock, which you see here, is horrible to build any sort of anchor for rappelling. So we brought all the tools. I had pitons, I had nuts, I had a couple cams, and I had a dead man. And as we got into it, it was this realization that like, let's just build the dead man. I built the dead man out of a piece of 1x4. And what
Can you
ends
explain
up
a
just
dead mat for someone who maybe doesn't know exactly what it is?
Yeah, essentially you bury something deep enough into the snow and pack it in such a way that it is an unbelievably strong anchor. A lot of people carry those metal kind of aluminum pickets. You can bury that. I didn't want to leave a picket behind. I figure like leaving a piece of wood behind is something that's a bit more biodegradable and something that's not kind of harmful to the environment. So quite a bit extra weight than bringing a piece of wood, but I like to bring a piece of wood. And yeah, there's some techniques depending on the snow, bury it down. I know I've seen tests on well-built anchors that are built into the snow, and like you could rappel a car off of them. When they are built well, they are incredibly strong. So we had really good snow for it. That spring refrozen snow, so it becomes super hard. You might as well be, putting a concrete anchor into something. So yeah, built a dead man instead of fussing around with rock and trying to deal with it. Had heard of a story of someone that tried to drill bolts, a bolted anchor in here, and then going up the next year, and the bolts had gotten ripped out by avalanches. So yeah, the dead man anchor was the call. And yeah, this was in February. This section right here was all snow covered up until this was the main rappel. We pretty much down climbed from this point all the way to here over snow. It was thin snow on rock. There's a couple little pitches where you were hitting rock, and then wrapped over that section. And then this section, which we talked about, which can be a rappel as well, was filled in. So we got to only do one rappel, and it was awesome. Yeah, I think. And then I'll never forget skiing out into this basin. You can actually see it right here. This is where Bjarne and I just got to the bottom and hugged and celebrated, and just like, I don't know, had that feeling of like 4 years of work finally done, and done in a way that was just, I thought, executed perfectly. Like, skied it in really good snow, saw the most beautiful sunrise. We had like great teamwork throughout it. We did it efficient. It was just one of those days where everything comes together. And to me, that's what the mountains are about. Like, learning so much of the intricacies of this place, spending so much time up there, being frustrated at times, but then getting it done and doing it in a way that the style you're proud of, that you knew had margin for error, that was good snow. God, it really doesn't get better than that. So as you said, Bjarne, this is definitely one of the top 5 lines for me as well. It's like, it was pretty all time.
Yeah, it's for sure everything you said. I agree with you. And we tried it so many times, and then be able to execute it together, it was like, yeah, it was freaking awesome.
Yeah. I'm gonna stop sharing my map. I think we kind of went through it. I will say it was pretty cool. Like, this line itself, when we skied down, came back to here, packed up camp, and it's like an 8,000 vertical foot run back to the car. Not many places in the world where you can ski 8,000 continuous feet. Like, no skating, no stopping. The east side is a special place. So yeah, I'll stop sharing my screen and we can go into Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cody and Bjarne. That is totally one of my favorite episodes of the 50 Project. So I'm glad to like get to spend more time like breaking it down with you. You guys put in years of work to make that happen. And you know, once again, like I think I can speak for everyone who's here tonight when I say like we really appreciate your context and your risk tolerance in the mountains. Like having the patience to spend years going after this line and really thinking through every step and making sure the time was right is something that I think we should all try to mirror in our own backcountry skiing. And it's awesome that you put that thought into it versus just charging to finish this crazy list that you have in front of you. So thanks again. Is my screen being shared now?
Yeah, we got the mapping, the split couloir.
Cool. One more time, we have this 70% off discount. If you guys have any issues, I know the chat has sent you our CX contact. If you guys are having any issues accessing this deal, make sure you reach out to them. They'll be able to set you up. And then also, last thing, we're doing the giveaway right after the Q&A. So make sure that you enter the form here, and we will be drawing live at the end. If you guys can't make it to the end for the drawing, no worries. You don't have to be present. I'll shoot you an email after. So with that, we're going to move into the Q&A. I'd love to see some awesome questions get asked right now, and then we can answer them live. So yeah, if you guys want to fill out that Q&A with some questions you had, it can be about the line, it can be about backcountry skiing, it can be whatever you guys want to ask these guys. The floor is yours.
Wow. I'm scrolling through the Q&A. There's a lot of them are answered, but should we try and pick one out that we want to talk about?
Yeah, any standing out to you, Cody?
Not yet. I see Matthias Fredersen. Hi, Matthias.
Oh,
You know Matthias, Bjarne.
Oh yeah. Hi, how are you, buddy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
Tjena,
a
hur är
legendary.
läget? Kan prata svenska. Förstår ingen annan vad vi säger. Det är jävligt gött alltså.
Yes.
Yeah. Nice.
legendary Swedish photographer that I used to work with a lot. How about showing the process of guessing your red line? Yeah, I can. Oh, I guess I would almost go back into it, but it takes. There's a few things in summer. I'll use quite often the Snap to guide because there's quite often trails that are listed in here, and so when you're in the summer and you're looking at actual trails like this one, you can use the Snap to feature in the build a route part, and you'll just like click here and click to the bottom and it'll just go along this entire trail and tell you the exact mileage and route. In the winter, I'm just doing a kind of free form, and as you can kind of see, all right, not seeing it, but I just do a free form and just kind of do point draw all the way through, and you're just getting a guesstimation. And you can look at the topo, do a quick like calculation, like, all right, we're going to be starting at 6,300 feet. We're going to be going to 14. So what's the math on that? And then for mileage, just getting a rough estimate. Vert to me is kind of the most important thing. So quite often, I'm always kind of building those little routes just to get a guesstimate of what the length is.
Yeah, I think the more times you do those routes, maybe they get a little bit more accurate, after spending more time doing it. But yeah.
Yeah. Linus, that's a good question. I assume Cody Bjarne have a ton of different routes, points saved in onX. How do you manage them and all stay organized? Files. I have them all filed. I have a file of 50 plus lines that I would like to ski that I've kind of built, and it could be just a waypoint, just being like, hey, this is a line, the summit of a peak. It could be an actual route I drove, but a 50 plus, I have a file of 50. For this, I just built this, and it's just all the split information that'll live as a file. Takes tiny bit of extra time to do that organization, but it is unbelievably helpful if you want to go back to anything.
And within onX, like what I use is the foldering. So whenever you create a line or import a line or use waypoints or everything like that, you can actually categorize them in folders. I could probably spend an entire masterclass showing you my process for storing things in the folders, but yeah, like make sure, like that's a huge part of it is just the data management and the stuff that you record, the stuff you dream about, kind of making sure that's all backed up is a lot of work actually. But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Brooke wants a masterclass on data management, so I'll put that on the calendar for the future.
Nice. Alex Yang, do you two rely on recent imagery or just use local weather reports or a combination? Recent imagery to me is just getting a ballpark of what's going on in a place. So for me, like when I was checking the map a couple days ago, I just want to see what generally I kind of do a quick scroll through the east side, north to south, and see like, is it more dry to the north or wetter to the north and drier to the south, and just kind of get a guesstimate. So looking at when I was showing the recent imagery in the presentation, you can see right now that it's dirt walking for probably 3,000 vertical feet before you get to the snow line. So rarely use it on a day-to-day basis, more use it for scoping kind of what the snowpack is like in a zone that I'm not familiar to. It really becomes really critical, I find, in the shoulder seasons. So you can see that, oh, that couloir is still potentially in May, or vice versa. Hey, we got a snowstorm in November. Is there snow down there? And you're like, well, there might be snow. And then you got to dig in from there. But just kind of the first thing to look at.
There's a lot of good questions in here.
Yeah, you talked about heat maps. There's some obvious reasons why to keep them off onX, but do you ever use them? No, I don't really use them. Maybe I've used them for some like trail running in the summer, but definitely not for winter stuff. I want to do my own research. I want to like, a guidebook giving you the quick overview and then diving in from there. I don't know. I just, the heat maps, the way I've seen them, they're kind of in a certain way, like color coded. So it's very red. And so, a ton of people are going there, but that's all you get out of it, that a ton of people are going there. And that doesn't provide you much information. I want to be able to click on a route and have a guidebook author give me some background information, which then I can dive in from there. I think there's some potential dangers to it. I don't want to like speak too much to it, but there's been some incidents, specifically in the Tetons, with bad information in certain sort of information resources that are out there. So to me, it's providing enough information that you get a quick overview, but the knowledge that you need to dive deeper than this is really important. So with heat maps, I just don't feel like I get much out of it other than tons of people go there.
Yeah, and to take a step back, heat maps refer to some other apps will use. Basically, if you were to start a track in onX and start recording where you're going, there's a publicly available. It'll basically show where other people are recording tracks. And as Cody kind of said, like what I think is a detriment with them, especially for backcountry skiing, is you don't have a lot of context with who those people were, what they were doing, what the avalanche conditions were on the times that they were out there. So I think they're interesting to look at, but I think a lot of times they could be more trouble than they're worth. And currently with the way onX is structured, like we started as a hunting company. So if we started putting heat maps out, the hunters would be like, hey, hey, you kind of just showed everybody where I'm hunting, and people wouldn't be very happy with that. So that's kind of our philosophy on the heat mapping thing with onX.
Ryan Leonard asked a good one. Did you use onX for the mapping of Rogers Pass to bugs, the bugs to Rogers? And yes, cool. There's this guy, Doug Sproul. He wrote the guidebooks to Rogers Pass, and he makes a GPX, a downloadable package of every single waypoint, every single alternative route, every single hut along the way. It is like one of the most impressive feats of work that I've seen, and he has it free available on his website. If you just look it up, like Bugs to Rogers GPX, you'll find it, and you can then just import it straight into onX, and it just populates your map. It's all in one folder, and it's absolutely amazing. Like how often were we staring at the map, Bjarne?
I mean, how often did we not? It's like we looked at the map all the time. It's kind of open very often, because especially when you do such a long navigation, it's like if you do something wrong, then you're like, oh gosh, we added a lot of time. So yeah, definitely looked at that very often. I think maybe 40% of my filming is like when we are looking at phones,
Well, yeah, and it's like when you're going into train, you don't know. Like to me, you go in, you're at a point. Like I think about day 2 when we're up on that glacier and we're watching a storm roll in. We know from research that the route goes over this little pass and this col. There's these 2 sections, and you're watching the storm going in and going like, huh, that looks bad. And then you see a blind rollover coming off the end of the glacier. You don't know, is that doable? Am I going to get super committed, and are we going to like just go straight into the storm because we know that's the route? That's again where digital maps come into such an advantage, because I can walk in as a non-local to a zone like the Selkirks, go on an 8-9 day tour across them and from the Selkirks to the Purcells, and just have some answers that help you make decisions while out there. You shouldn't have the map make decisions for you. It's a tool to help make decisions. So when we dropped off the end of that glacier, we knew that like, hey, there's a valley down there. We can camp out there for a day. It looks like there's maybe a way back up onto the route if the storm clears or the avalanche hazard feels low enough. But it also looks on the map we could probably get out of there. So, like a topo map, that's what everyone used forever. Now it's just easier and more portable. So, and more understandable by the masses. You don't have to be trained up in them as much. So, yeah.
And if you want to learn more about Cody's process, especially with the Bugs to Rogers Traverse and using onX in tandem with it, he made a bonus episode that's up on his channel. That is, I think, like 30 minutes long of you using the app and planning that journey. So that's a great resource. I like that one a lot. So
to Bjarne, here's one for Bjarne. How do you balance safety, timing, and getting all the shots? Do you plan that out with the route planning, or just as you go?
It's tricky. It's definitely something that you think about before, of course, but when it comes to these shots, you know, you don't plan them 100% before. It's kind of tricky to plan what you're going to shoot everything. You can plan the story, but when it comes to actually capturing what we are doing out there, it's I like to look around me and see what's around me, what's possible and what's safe to do, and then we take decisions out of that.
Cool. All right, let's answer like 2 more and then move on to the Q&A. This is a good one I like. Daniel's asking, favorite introduce your girlfriend to ski touring route near Mammoth. So Cody, like with a lot of the discussions we had with adding that Mammoth area guidebook was the fact that if you look at a lot of the ratings for a lot of the lines in that book, they generally will fall into extreme in the 8s rating. So is there any other beta you could give on a low angle tour to get people started in the Mammoth area? Or any other advice for the Sierras, the Eastern Sierras in general?
Yeah, well, obviously, I kind of talked about it in the very last episode, Bloody Couloir. I think that's the first big line that a lot of people go for there, and it's a great first big line. You know, it's beautiful. You can see it from town. It's not a super huge day, but it's a big enough day. It's not super steep, but it's got some pitch to it. It's absolutely awesome. But I'm trying to look it up. I'm actually looking at this zone because I'm not super familiar with Mammoth, but I have gone out to kind of the Sherwins and the Mammoth Crest, the Red Cone zone, as like the very kind of introductory level. The Mammoth Crest, which is right there, past Tamarack cross country ski area, low angle, tree skiing. There's some steeper stuff up top, but there's some like down near Crystal Crag and all that kind of stuff. Lake George is a really good zone. So I know that's the kind of zone that a lot of people are just kind of going to. And, you know, it's a little bad weather or the avalanche danger is a little touchy, kind of stay in that lower treed zone around the Mammoth Crest, Crystal Crag, and the Sherwins and stuff. Again, I don't spend tons of time around that zone, but those are kind of the lines I would say.
Awesome. I think we'll close it out with a question for me.
Yeah.
So what is the future of the 50 and what can we expect from the 50 plus this year?
Well, for the 50, you know, like Bjarne and I talked about in the beginning, we spent a lot of time in a tent last year working on some of the 2 of the last 4 lines left. We continue to work on them. There is a desire to from both Bjarne and myself. We are working on a much bigger project related to the 50 that one day people will see. Not probably before 2027, I'll tell you that. So it's kind of a potentially long ways off. But it's a much bigger project and we're both really excited to be working on it. And I would say the difference between what we're working on and what the 50 was, the 50, Bjarne and I worked on it. It was very process oriented. We showed you how often you get from point A to point B and back to point A again. How we made decisions out there, discussing the route, making those decisions, making observations, the process of getting out there. And I think what this bigger project that we're working on is much more the human story. Some of the stuff that Bjarne and I didn't go into, some of the stuff, the stretches, the hardship, the balance of risk and family, some of the stuff that I didn't feel comfortable kind of making movies about myself, but Bjarne and I both have a lot of that footage, and then we're working on some of the lines of the last year. Pretty good stories that came out of last year, and one day they will come out on film. So that's kind of where we're at on the 50. And I know it's a bummer that we're telling you about something we're working on and not be able to see it for a couple of years, but that's just the way it is. And 50 plus, yeah, we some potential we're going international this year, at least one line. We don't know exactly. But I think the goal is for both of us, like we've been following this guidebook, or not this guidebook, this book for so long. And now it's being able to kind of choose lines that personally inspire us, and then get to decide if they're classic or not. So there's going to be more of that this year. Not sure where, when, following the weather, following snow conditions. I would love to get out there and go film right now, but it seems it's pretty unstable most places, or pretty low snow in most places. So Bjarne probably won't start shooting till February at earliest, May or March, and then April and then May. So kind of, I don't know. That answer it, Bjarne?
I think that was a good answer. I feel like when we were out there the last years, it's been very, very fun and challenging. We learned a lot by following this book, but I feel like very often we were out there and we were like, you know what? If this wasn't in a book, we would actually go and do that instead, because that looks more fun and better, and we can learn more, get better experience. So I think that's kind of where this next steps with a 50 plus is coming. I think that's going to be a back to the roots and do what we do, and I think that's going to be good challenges. We're going to learn a lot, share a lot of knowledge. I look forward to the deeper dive into the 52 with some more human stories. I'm always into those a lot, so I look forward for those in the next couple of years. But I'm glad we do the 50 plus, so we have something to share. So it's not just like nothing for a couple of years. So there will be plenty out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've really appreciated this year's 50 plus. It's fun to watch you ski fun snow again. Like the powder episode was just, it's a classic day. It's not a classic line, but it was a classic day. It was really cool to see that side once again, instead of lines like this. Not that I don't love them, but you know, some of the lines you're doing in the 50 plus are a little more accessible too, for the mainstream of people like me who won't be rappelling down the split couloir. Well, awesome. Thanks everyone for joining. We are going to do the part that you've all been waiting for, which is the giveaway. Thanks everyone for filling out the form. We have a lot of people that have entered, and it might even brick this spinning wheel that I found on the internet, but we'll see if it happens. It might brick it. Oh, there we go. We'll see. All right. Cross your fingers. Here it comes.
This is pretty cool.
I feel like I need theme music. All right, Benjamin, you are the grand prize winner. So I'll be emailing you after this webinar. We'll get you that backpack. We'll get you an onX Backcountry Elite subscription, and we'll get you a swag pack from onX. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining and spending over an hour with us talking about backcountry skiing. Thank you, Cody and Bjarne, for sharing your wisdom and expertise with all of us. And to everyone out there, you know, get after it, do it safely, find a mentor, be a mentor. And yeah, what did you say, Bjarne? You gotta ride when the mountains allow you to do it. That's a little more.
There you go. That's it.
But thanks everyone for joining. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And tune into the next one. We'll be continuing our masterclass series and having more conversations with skiers, backpackers, hikers, mountain bikers, etc. As we continue through the seasons. So thanks everyone for joining, and we'll catch you next one.